I'm putting on my band.
Okay.
We're off to a rousing start.
That was something to go live to. Howdy, folks. Happy Monday. We had lots of games, lots of interesting stuff that happened over the weekend. We'll discuss all of that in the next hour. Anthony will be joining us. Russ, start us off with a pre-show.
Yeah, so yesterday was the 100th anniversary of the Negro Leagues. This is a Josh Gibson shirt I've had for a long time. Cool. He would have been one of the best players ever. He still was, but he would have killed it in the majors too. I probably interviewed, I want to say 3 or 4 Negro League players, multiple times. I did post a picture yesterday on my Twitter about Ernest Westfield. This guy was a pitcher. He actually, I don't know if I remembered this or not. I kind of dug into it a little yesterday, and turns out he was a starter for the East-West All-Star game for the Negro Leagues. The following year, he did it in 60. In 61, Satchel Paige won it. It just shows you that even though, Robinson broke through, it still took years for a lot of black players to break through, and they still were playing in the Negro Leagues even into the 60s. So it's one of those things where I always felt bad talking to these guys beforehand, and they'd always make me feel good afterwards. Like they were like, hey, look, we still played with top talent. Like we're good. Like they felt like they still reached the pinnacle. And in a lot of ways they did. It's just, I wish, everybody would have seen it that way while a lot of them were alive. I think we only started to see it that way as a group, maybe like 5 to 10 years ago.
Well, coincidentally, also in baseball, but not exactly the greatest of anniversaries. Today is the 100th anniversary of the death of Ray Chapman.
Yeah.
Who was an article in the paper this week on it, actually. The Post had a whole 2-page spread on it this week. And
the reason it's notable, other than it's the only death during a Major League Baseball game, at least in terms of a player. I know there was an umpire who died in Cincinnati. Right. I can't remember who it was. Was it? But anyway,
I don't remember.
Chapman was hit by a Yankee pitcher named Carl Mays in the head, and then he died a few hours later. And what ended up happening is that was essentially the end of the spitball era, because Mays, I think, was a rather noted spitballer, and he lost control of the pitch and hit Chapman in the head. It also, batting helmets then became – no, that didn't come until much later, but eventually it did. But not exactly the greatest of anniversaries, but should have been.
It's uplifting, Mike.
Yes.
Started with plastic inserts, actually, and then it migrated. Yeah, a player in the 60s or somebody in the 70s was the last one to be able to bat without a full batting helmet. But it was interesting articles. They talk in the column, and I'll send you guys the link. Is they talk about that Mays used to be more of a like a Kent Colby type pitcher, scraping his fingers on the bottom, and actually he said Chapman moved inside a couple of feet, like step closer to the plate, and he changed his motion to be more over the top. And the ball kind of sailed on him a little bit, and that's what ended up happening when he hit him. And then in terms of Russ, in my opinion, Gibson, Homestead Gray's guy, probably would have come close to Ruth's record, is what they say, based upon the raw power that he had. He was probably the best raw power hitter in terms that they had in the Negro League over time. Unfortunately, he passed away way too young as well.
Yeah, he did. Mike, you brought back, actually, Jan brought back a memory. So probably until I was about 10 years old, in Little League, we had those plastic inserts in the hats. And then eventually we started getting the helmets, and then eventually even the helmet with the flap. So that did with the ear flap. That took a while, actually. I forgot about that.
Yeah. I remember when we started, we had the helmets all along. All right, let's get started. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Monday, August 17th, 2020.
I'm Jan Levine.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. So we have 8 series, still everyone alive, although one team is down 3 games to nothing. We'll start with the Bruins and the Hurricanes, because that's the one that has gained the most attention for.
Gee, I wonder why it gained so much attention.
Yeah, for off the ice commentary and on the ice. Situations. First off the ice, the commentary, or first the event, which I think dominated the weekend, was Tuukka Rask opting out and leaving the bubble in Toronto. Situation with his family. He's got 3 young kids, one a newborn. And the comments, we talked about the comments on Friday about how he really didn't seem into it in terms of what was going on. And obviously with the things that are going on with his family right now, that was one of the reasons why. And it came out a couple hours before game time that he was opting out and he was leaving the bubble. It didn't faze the Bruins at all. Halak had a really good game. He's a veteran goaltender, and obviously I think they would be better and their chances would be better if Rask was there, but I don't think it rules out the Bruins having a chance of making a run. But the reaction from people like Milbury, and a lot of fans, I don't get it. It's like I know that there's a predisposition in Boston regarding Tuukka Rask where he's never been the most popular. He's not Tim Thomas. Right. I've always stuck up for him because I think he's a very good goaltender. I think he was one of the main reasons why they got to the Stanley Cup final last year.
Absolutely. And I think about it career-wise, he's been better than Thomas career-wise. Thomas had a couple of seasons and obviously that playoff run, but on the overall whole, Rask has been a much better goalie.
Yeah.
Than Thomas, not even close in my opinion with you, especially because Thomas had missed a lot of time with injuries.
Right. But it just doesn't seem. I don't know whether it was just that Thomas was the type of personality and sort of the type of player that gained popularity from the fans, and sort of Rask is sort of this quiet type of guy. I think
just because Thomas was the underdog, I really do. If Thomas made Rask's money, he would have felt the wrath too. That's where it all comes from. It all comes from his contract, and it's a shame. But as far as Milbury, it was awful. Even on local radio here, while there's some athletes that are on the radio, and while they're saying they understand, they're saying there's going to be teammates that don't like it. Well, you know what? If you're a teammate and you don't like it, tough, man. I mean, this is human. This is humanity. This is like your family is important. Yes, he signed on for it. Yes, he probably felt guilty being there, and maybe that's why you didn't get his best play. But his not great play was still pretty good.
Yeah,
it's not like he gave up 5 goals in a game. But the idea is, you look at it and you say, okay, obviously something was going on at home, and he has a newborn that's like 4 or 5 months old, plus 2 other kids. You could say hire all the nannies. You're signed on. Once the boat leaves. I've heard every bad cliche and every bad take. But at the end of the day, if his wife calls and says, I need help, you have to leave the bubble. That's part of being married. Like, that's it. I've gone across the country. I've been at an event and had to leave because something was going on at home. Like, that's it. It happens.
Right. Yeah.
So, look, every teammate has their own view on this, right? And everybody, and even every individual has their own view, and not everybody's going to like it. And I'm sure there are his teammates that aren't in favor of the move that he made. But he made a move putting his family in front of everything else, which is A, commendable, B, is the way it should be, because as you said, Russ, once his career is over, irrespective of that, in general, obviously, once his career is over, he has his family, and he has to live with that family. And if there are concerns from a health perspective, and clearly they were weighing and preying on his mind throughout the entire time he rejoined the team, then he made the move that he felt to give him peace of mind. And also, actually, if you think about it, ironically, would you rather have a fully invested Yaroslav Halak who doesn't have the same concerns, or Tuukka Rask, who rightfully so has his mind elsewhere because of the concerns that exist elsewhere? To me, I think they're better off having a guy who's fully invested in the current. What this does for him down the road in terms of Boston, clearly that's not known, right? Well, the question is whether or not the organization, publicly, they're saying the right things.
Right.
Behind the scenes, clearly we'll never know. Actions will end up speaking louder than words, depending on how he's treated in the future and what happens when things hopefully return to a sense of normalcy. But that's going to happen for every athlete.
But like in the chat room, like Funky says, because he screwed his team. He didn't screw his team. He spoke to his team. He was honest. I'm sure right after that press conference that day which again, he's a very honest guy. He probably went to his teammates and started talking to him about it and saying, hey, I'm not sure if I'm going to be here tomorrow.
Well, we saw this in every sport, right? We talked about it happen in baseball. We compared and contrasted. Jonas Cespedes, supposed to opted out for family reasons, didn't tell anybody. Marcus Stroman showed up at the ballpark, told everybody, whether or not you like his decision or not, he was above board in front. Now, whether or not you agree with him because of the service time, but guys in basketball also have opted out of the bubble, several of them, in terms of not coming even to the 8-game restart of the season, let alone the playoffs.
Well, with Cespedes, I wonder if he just had a hankering to go hunt boar again. But when it
hold on, so I still want to answer the chat room. So like Joe says, Russ, no one on his team has family. Come on, everybody has family. He's the one that had a family issue where he felt like he had to leave. If you don't think Zdeno Chara had a family issue, he would be leaving. Come on, man.
You could explain it this way. He actually could be doing more for his team by leaving simply because if he stayed there and was half-hearted and played at 50% capacity.
Right, so I said about Halak, right.
Yeah, so, I mean.
Look, should he have maybe made a decision before it started? Yes, but the question is obviously the concern level got ratcheted up over time potentially, which then ended up making him change his mind. In other words, he probably had a view at X point and was reluctant about going back. But that reluctance continued to grow and grow to the point of where it was potentially impacting his play and his ability to stay in the bubble. So then he made a decision and said, look, I am doing myself a disservice, but he also probably figured he's doing a team a disservice because he's not fully invested given where they are in the playoffs right now.
Right. Now on the ice, like I said, Halak played well except for a rather dumb play behind his own net where he shot it out and it was intercepted by Nino Niederreiter for a goal. The Bruins played well without Pasternak, and now
and they're going to play another game without Pasternak.
Pasternak is not playing today, but now the on the other side, Andrei Svechnikov is probably done for the playoffs after an ugly incident. And the thing was, it wasn't like Chara wrestled him down and his leg got caught underneath him. He was spinning off of the bigger defenseman, trying to.
They were jockeying for position.
Exactly, and his leg came out from under him. It looked like either at best a high ankle sprain, at worst.
That looked to me MCL. That looked to be MCL or ankle is what it looked like from the way his leg got caught underneath him.
Yeah. And so, but again, then off the ice things, I understand homerism. I get it. I listen to some of the driving home. I listened to Tampa Bay and Columbus on the radio, and there's no bigger homer in terms of a color commentator than Phil Esposito. Sort of like groaning and moaning when the Lightning miss a scoring opportunity, but Jack Edwards takes the cake, and I've met Jack Edwards a couple times. He seems like a real nice guy in person.
Yeah, but he's been covering up these hits now for years.
I remember him on ESPN when he first started, right? And he was a completely different announcer because he wasn't announcing for a team. He was obviously balanced because he had to be, because he was covering sports as a whole. But ever since he's gone to Boston, he's been horrific. And that comment was embarrassing on so many different levels. But first of all, especially since, look, be bad enough if the guy got mildly injured or didn't get injured at all, if you want to make a dumb comment. But when you saw the accident and realized that the guy may be out for several months, to make a comment like that, is just there's no place in it. But unfortunately, we defend him and say it's typical Edwards. When does typical Edwards have a ramification? Is the better question.
It should have had it already. I mean, Jack Edwards would defend the Roadrunner for all the pain he's inflicted on Wile E. Coyote. He would cover it up every single time. Like, that's what Jack Edwards does. Every time we see this, and this has been the last 2 or 3 years, Jeremy Jacobs has to do something about it. Unless this is the way he wants his team portrayed and the product portrayed. If that's the way he wants it, then you can't say anything about it.
But no,
I'm going to get you some Acme stuff.
Yeah, the comment that he made about Roman Polak, and it was when Polak was with Dallas and got hit along the boards, and he was motionless on the ice, and he says, well, something like just desserts or bad hockey karma. It's like, okay, please give me a break. It's like the stuff like that doesn't belong. I mean, I dig the Revolutionary War comments that he.
I got texts about it, Mike. Like, there are a lot of people in hockey that didn't like it, and really something should be done. And Jeremy Jacobs is the only guy that can do it.
Right. All right, so that series is 2-1 in favor of the Bruins, as we said.
Anthony, you want to weigh in at all? We're talking about Jack Edwards' ridiculous comments.
I said he would defend the Roadrunner for every pain he inflicted on Wile E. Coyote. That's what Jack Edwards does now.
Sounds about right. That does sound about right. I mean, I kind of on off the post. We kind of went off on this on yesterday morning. So, I mean, listen. At the end of the day, the comment I make about Jack Edwards stands basically that there is homerism, and then you have Jack Edwards who takes it to gaslighting levels.
Right. All right. Let's talk about the series we can go through pretty quickly because I don't think there's many doubts about where this is going. The Islanders are leading the Capitals 3-0. And I have to fess up. I thought the Capitals were going to show up in this series. I thought they were the better team in this series. Boy, was I wrong. And boy, I did say that if they lost, that Reardon would lose his job. He may lose his job before Game 4. The way things are going, that team does not look prepared. Now they lost Backstrom, Carlson's at less than 100%. And they lost Samsonov before the playoffs with apparently an ATV accident. So that has to be factored in there. But they really have not shown up, Jan, in this series. They haven't shown up at all.
I think they were better yesterday. I mean, I thought that was their best game of the 3 yesterday, given how they played. I thought Holtby was great yesterday in that. I mean, the Islanders had a lot of good opportunities. First, let's talk. To me, the difference is Pelech and Pulak are playing a tremendous series. They have completely shut down that top line. Now, granted, no Backstrom makes a huge difference in terms of how the lineup goes, but they've done a tremendous job on shutting down that first line. Bouvalier was all over the place yesterday. I mean, Barzal I thought was pretty good. But the other key is different is we talked about this before the series. The Islanders' fourth line just continues to grind and create opportunities and create chances. And that's what they did a lot yesterday. And if you watch that game, that fourth line kept wearing down the Capitals throughout that game, creating opportunity after opportunity. So to me, the difference is the play of Pelech and Pulak, the play of that fourth line, and also just how good Varlamov has been between the nets. Now, Holtby's doing his best to keep him in the series, but the Islanders are finding ways to generate opportunities with all 4 of their lines, and Trotz is rolling all 4 lines with impunity because he hasn't had to shorten his bench at all.
Let's just call them the Washington hockey team because that's how bland they are. I mean, it's like I felt bad for Ovechkin because I saw after the game on the bench, he was so mad where others were more distraught. And I think that's the difference in some of the players on that team right now with the effort that they're giving, especially on defense. Like I get they don't have an all-star defense, but Carlson's obviously gutting it out. And some of these other guys are just not playing to their full potential. And it's killing them. Now, a typical thing that you saw that lets you know that this series is completely over is they were really hammering it in overtime and had a great chance. The minute they couldn't put it in and the puck went the other way, I think we all knew that Barzal was putting it away. Yeah. No matter what Holtby was going to do, because that is just the way that series is going. But I do give credit to the Islanders. And I don't know if it's even all that Trotz has them figured out because that game was literally this close. And if they win, it's 2-1, and you don't know after that. But I give them credit for, hey, now they're producing some offense, so they're really becoming dangerous.
Anthony, our resident Islanders fan, Joe Morello, has basically said, told you, Mike. It's like it does help when you play 2 teams in the first round of the playoffs last year and this year that totally like just surrendered. It's like, take me, I'm yours. The Penguins last year and the Capitals this year. But and honestly, I mean, you have to give them credit that they're winning.
That's the thing. At the end of the day, we can complain about what the Islanders' opponent. At the end of the day, they're forcing them into bad decision making. They just are. And I did not. I was one of the guys on this panel who flat out said I did not like the Caps in this series at all against the Islanders. That they're the exact. In many ways, Mike, it reflects what you said with Columbus and Toronto. There were elements of that. The difference is that the Caps have a resume. Mm-hmm. That's the biggest.
The only thing I'll say, though, and we can get into it further when we cover the other game, I don't think this is a function of because a team has won a cup, they're not as riled up in the bubble as other teams.
I'm not going to get into that again.
I don't buy it.
I think there is some psychology involved depending on
psychology
individual teams and situations, but you did sign on to do this, so you have to follow through as professionally as possible.
That's going down X road. It's like, you're telling me that a team that won the Stanley Cup 9 years ago with almost a completely different roster isn't motivated to win the Stanley Cup now? Bull crap. Exactly. Of course they are.
No, they are.
But again, the Islanders Trotz is just out, doing what he does. He's out trotzing Reardon, and it's just, I said from the beginning of the series, the coaching matchup is a problem in this series because, again, I'm not. It's not that Reardon's necessarily a bad coach. It's just Trotz knows them inside and out.
Yeah, but I mean, look. Okay, if what happens, what we think is going to happen in Game 4, and they get swept, you have to say that after Trotz leaves for the Islanders, their 2 results in the playoffs were a Game 7 overtime loss to Carolina and a 4-game sweep at the hands of the Islanders.
Maybe
that's
one more thing to bring up here. So, if Varlamov gets him, a couple rounds in the playoffs, he's the starter next year. Sorokin's going to be the backup, and Trotz doesn't play his backups a ton. He really doesn't. I mean, I don't know how many games Greiss played this year, but
Trotz I do think you want to. I still think in this day and age now, and the way the league is set up, Trotz is going to play he's going to have to give Sorokin some time.
Yeah,
and a decent amount, especially if you as you go through the season. Just because Varley's having a hell of a run here, if he struggles next season, then Sorokin theoretically is an outstanding insurance policy and gives you the chance to transition over to him when you have the opportunity.
Well, I don't think Sorokin should worry because we know Varlamov gets hurt every year, so that'll be his opportunity.
But Varlamov this year he played 45.
Right. So Greiss got some work, so I think Sorokin will get it, and it'll at least be better than Bridgeport. All right. Okay, so the Colorado-Arizona series, Darcy Kemper almost single-handedly gets the Coyotes from being swept. They win 4-2 yesterday. 49 saves for Kemper.
A lot of goalies faced a lot of shots yesterday.
I'm still
gallery in the NHL yesterday.
I'm still fairly confident that Colorado is going to win this series in 5.
I'm not worried.
I'm not worried at all, but it was a great effort by Kemper.
Oh yeah, we knew he would have some great efforts. There's no question he's going to have another one too. But again, I just think the way Colorado can roll their lines and the speed on their defense, they're going to still dictate the pace.
Any thoughts on that one, Jan?
Look, we said before the series, right, that we thought that if Kemper had been healthy, he likely would have been a Vezina Trophy candidate. He showed that yesterday, right? He was the sole reason why they stayed in that game and they won that game because he was just phenomenal. Colorado played their typical Colorado type of game. Well, I'm sure there's a couple of other games we're going to get into that had a similar effect in terms of the goalie. You look at the Calgary game, you look at a couple of other games yesterday. The goalie stood on their head. That's what happened. Kemper stood on his head. We know he has that capacity and capability to do so. But overall, I still think that Colorado is going to win the series.
Anthony?
Yeah, I would concur. We discussed this at the beginning of the series. We knew Kemper was going to be good for at least 1 to 2 starts where he was going to have to carry the load for Arizona. There's talent there in Arizona. If they can, and they can continue to. But again, getting consistent pressure against Colorado is a very tall order for them.
You're not going to have the puck. It's not like they're the best defensive team.
No, but they possess it. They just eat you up in their end. They just take it into your end, and they just, they're Tarasov, classic Tarasov. In the way they handled their puck.
And Zadorov is tough, man. So they have toughness too.
They got toughness, and again, a lot of skill. It's a well balanced blue line.
They block shots.
Mm-hmm. So. But I'll give Arizona again. We knew Kemper was good for 1 or 2 games. I remain on Colorado in 5. I think Arizona might be able to squeeze 1 more, but not much more. But that'll be the extent of it.
And more than likely, they're going back to Grubauer because Francouz only allowed 2 goals on 21 shots, and they scored 2 empty netters. Not to say that he was responsible for the loss, but when the other goalie is facing 51 shots and you're facing 21, that's a game that you have to win, and you didn't. So they're probably going to go back to Grubauer. This is the series I've been following the closest. It's not exactly the most exciting of series, although 5 overtimes was exciting. The game on Saturday between the Lightning and the Blue Jackets, The Lightning did what the Blue Jackets normally do. It was after a certain point in that game, about 12 minutes into the first period, Columbus had 7 shots on goal for the rest of the game. The funny thing is they had 7 shots on Vasilevsky, and they beat him twice. And even though the Tampa Bay shut them down, the final score was 3-2, and they were in it for most of the second and third period, but they just weren't able to muster enough offense to tie up that game. And then if they did, who knows if they would have been able to win it. But right now, this series, even though it's 2-1, Tampa has been extremely even. 7 goals in the series for Tampa, 7 goals in the series for Columbus. Tortorella after the game, I don't know if this is a cop-out. I think this is actually pretty true. He said, we didn't hit the wall in game 2 after that 5 overtime game. We hit the wall in game 3, and we were almost mentally fatigued more than physically fatigued. And he gave them off from practice yesterday, and now they play 3 o'clock this afternoon today, down 2-1. I still think Columbus has a chance in this series, but I think, Anthony, the talent, it's there for Tampa, and they're a different team than they were last year. They added Goudreau, they added Coleman, they added Bogosian, who's actually playing, and he's played well. And they're a better team than they were last year.
He's in the right role too, Bogosian too. Let's face it. In the NHL, this is on a high level team. He's
playing with Hedman.
Exactly, and he's in an excellent support role to arguably the best defenseman in the National Hockey League. So again, Tampa's got, if Tampa comes with the same commitment that Columbus does, they're going to win the talent war. That's basically how it's going to go. And I'm not telling you right now that I don't think Columbus has a chance of evening this series up. And we all knew the effect was going to happen. And also Tampa has to also potentially have to deal with, at certain points of this series, potentially this may be their game where they hit the wall a little bit and Columbus takes advantage of it. There's always a toll that's paid for a 5 overtime game, no matter what, at some point. So ultimately, again, I think Tampa should win this series out. Again, I originally called this one in 6. I think it still will bear out that way. And it'll be good for the Lightning going forward to have that if and when they're able to throw those shackles off, so to speak.
I mean, look, everybody likes to rip on Stamkos getting hurt. He still was more than a point a game this year for the time he played. And I just had this feeling that if Tampa were in trouble in this series, we would see him. Because nobody knows what his injury is, but he's in the bubble, and he's in there for a reason. So obviously he's going to play at some point, or they believe he's going to play at some point. So they're doing this without Stamkos. They get him back, that would make a big difference. It really would. I know they have a ton of talent, but he makes that power play go.
Now, Jan, somebody who is, I watched the Tortorella team beat the team that I cover, so this is not any kind of big surprise. But they can't play the way they did in the last 2 periods of Game 3 and expect to win because you need to generate opportunities, and they were able to generate a lot of opportunities against Toronto and in that 5 overtime game, and they picked their spots after surviving an early rush by Tampa in Game 2. Where that game was blown was a 5-on-3 power play for 1 minute and 30 seconds that they really didn't get a great chance on. When with a guy like Werenski at the point, with Seth Jones and with Dubois, they needed to tie up that game at that point. And at that point, afterward, even though they got 2 goals, I thought the game was over with.
Yeah, I mean, they're missing big bodies in front also, right? That's kind of a thing. We talked about Josh Anderson not being there. This is one of those situations where maybe he would play a part. So give Tampa. Tampa's penalty kill is pretty solid overall, especially with Hedman back there. So Vasilevsky also has been very good. As you said, that last period, when they made it 3-2 and you thought they were going to have a big push and they didn't necessarily get it. I thought that Tampa did a nice job of clamping down on them and limiting their time and space, especially in terms of trying to generate an attack that forced them to regroup and go forward over and over and over again.
Yeah, this is for Richard Petrovsky in the chat who talked about Wile E. Coyote. So here's Wile E. Coyote's business card.
I should say super genius.
Super genius.
You have to work up to it. You have to work up to that.
Wile E. Coyote, super genius.
Yes. Okay.
We've just gone off that cliff.
Yes.
Yeah, we pretty much have.
Okay. So the Golden Knights had a chance to sweep the Blackhawks. Blackhawks stave off elimination yesterday with a sort of non-Blackhawk performance, a 3-1 victory. Very, I mean, they got great goaltending from Corey Crawford, who made 48 saves. But I thought Chicago played a pretty decent defensive game against a team that was looking to finish it off. I still think Vegas is winning this series, but I think it's a statement on Chicago and how they've taken steps toward being a playoff team again. And even though, this is the playoffs, but it's in a 16 team playoff situation, I think they could, if they make a couple improvements next year, I think they're going to be a playoff team. But, Russ, Vegas to me is among the class in the West.
No, they are. I mean, I'll wait and see what Chicago looks like before I call them possibly a playoff team next year, because they might be playing the last mileage out of Duncan Keith. They are playing him to death. He stayed out there like the final 3 minutes of that game, 3:37. Like, that's going to take a toll on this guy. It is, and he's going to do it because he's a warrior. He really is, and I give him all the credit because this guy has really had a great career. But that was a great game. It was, and we were texting back and forth. If anybody thinks that was a bad goal for Leonard, it was a deflection. Like,
some people we know thought so.
Yeah, I know. It's just like, stop. Deflections don't always get stopped. We know that they're hard. But anyhow, that was an equalizing kind of game. It's hard to sweep. It is hard to sweep.
After the way that Fleury played on Saturday, I mean, the whole reason that Fleury played was because it was back-to-back.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they were going to go – they're not going to stick with Fleury and go with him after not playing him at all through the qualifying round.
Crawford was great. Like, Crawford, that's as good as you'll ever see him ever again. Like, he was at the top of his game. He was stopping everything. He's going to get – I mean, the one thing about Crawford is he's going to get at least a 3-year contract out of this, where before I thought maybe he would get a 2-year contract and, that would be about it.
That would be a reasonable AAV.
He was right. There was a reason why he was voted the first, second, and third star last night. I mean, the guy was just – I watched that game last night live, and then I watched the condensed game again this morning. He was brilliant. I mean, he stole the game, plain and simple, for Chicago. Vegas completely outplayed them. The thing that impressed me the most was two things. One, his lateral movement from side to side was really good yesterday. And B, his glove hand was phenomenal yesterday. He must have taken 4 or 5 shots that looked ticketed top shelf and caught them in the glove hand. So those two things, as you said, I would be shocked if he doesn't get a 3-year deal, God forbid, unless he suffers an injury over the next couple games.
Right.
I still think Vegas, look, we always have said, winning the 4th game against any team is putting the nail in the coffin, is always the hardest game to win, because that team sees elimination staring them directly in the face, and they up their effort a little bit. And even with that yesterday, Vegas was all over Chicago. Chicago may win Game 5, but I kind of think that Vegas ends it in Game 5.
Yeah, I mean, and we'll save the postmortem until after Vegas eliminates them. But there are a couple contracts that the Blackhawks can get rid of, either by buyout or maybe by trade, to clear space to sign the guys. Because, Kubalik is an RFA.
Yeah, he's going to get some money.
He's going to get some money. Dylan Strome is an RFA. He's going to get some money. Slater Cuckoo has actually played fairly decent for them on the
Blue. Yeah, he'll get a middling kind of contract, but he'll get a raise.
Right. So, and then they have to re-sign Crawford or find themselves a goaltender. So, a guy like Brandon Saad, who's entering the final year of his contract, making $6 million, may be playing elsewhere if they find a team that's looking for a 1-year plug.
And I think Shaw's still under contract. He just opted out because of
unless they can put Seabrooks up on long-term IR, right? And that'll at least free up some.
He doesn't seem to want to do that, though.
I know, but question is physically if he can do it anymore.
Yeah, the one thing about that long-term IR, it has to go both ways.
Right.
The player has to sort of agree with the team. If the player shows up at training camp and wants to compete, there's not much you could do about it. You can't say go home. I mean, teams have tried to do that. It's a hard situation.
Yeah. And DeBrincat's new contract kicks in next year. So
yeah.
All right. Moving on to a couple of the other series. Now let's talk about the Habs in Philadelphia, because I have to say I was sort of like really interested in Game 3 after Montreal had that game in Game 2 where they were playing their coach and they were really, I think they were enthused to put a. Hold on a second. I'm going to mute Jan while Jan's corralling the dog. There you go.
We've all been there.
Yes. But Anthony, that could have been one of the most boring games I've ever watched, and
it was a grind fest. The whole thing was an absolute honestly, starting the Thompson line at the beginning of the game for Philadelphia pretty much set the signal of what Philadelphia was going to do. They were planning on trying to out-hab the Habs in this game, and they succeeded for the most part. There's obviously some big time concerns coming into Game 4, namely the Flyers power play, which again, I don't think Montreal's doing anything on that PK.
No, I just think it's
too much. I think it's just
isn't clicking.
It's not clicking. And this is the one area where I for the first time in a long time, where I'm agreeing with Mike Milbury and saying they got to change this umbrella isn't working. It's playing directly into what Montreal's trying to do. Now, Vigneault, I was just in the press conference with Alain Vigneault, and he stated that they are making some adjustments.
You know what they're going to do, Ant? They're just going to move Giroux back to the other side. I know they wanted him.
I know they don't want to. I know they don't want to.
I know, but you know what? That was
when you're down to putting Derek Grant out there on the power play in the third period of a game, you know you're running out of answers as to why, in fact, your power play. Now they had a few of those power plays. They had pretty good movement. And Price was just equal to them. But the majority of the other ones, starting with, it's like the minute with that 4-minute double minor that they couldn't cash. And the following power play afterwards, they looked better, but still couldn't cash even after that. Again, it just kind of the effect just snowballed after that.
I mean, this game could have been 10 overtimes, though. If that puck didn't go in the way it went in off Voracek, that would have been like a 10 overtime game.
Entirely possible in this case. Philadelphia basically went into, again, their intention was to take away the middle of the ice from Montreal, which they allowed them to basically have with impunity in Game 2. Game 3, they literally had only 4. Natural stat trick had only 4 high danger chances for Montreal the entire game, including
except 2 of them were while the Flyers were on the power play, which is again something.
Right. Again, it's symptomatic of another issue, which means Philadelphia could have been a hell of a lot better for Philly. Had it not been. That being said, do I think Philadelphia, for the most part, defensively really played a clinic and limited Montreal's speed? If that was their goal in the game, they accomplished that. Montreal, now in the early third, I thought Montreal, they started to pick up speed and started to get some chances. But still, they kept them for the most part to the perimeter. There wasn't, or if they did get it, for example, that one shorthanded, I think, play with Suzuki and Byron, Suzuki shot wide and he had a 2-on-1 short, and that to me was emblematic of Montreal. That was early in the game. They had 2 posts within a matter of seconds between Suzuki. I think it was Kotkaniemi and Kulak. Kulak was activated all game long. He was constantly jumping into plays.
Here's the one thing, and I think you'll agree with it, Anthony. Mm-hmm. I think there is still some dead weight right now on the Flyers where I think everybody on Montreal is giving all they have, and I don't know if that's the case for the Flyers.
I'll give it to you right now. James Van Riemsdyk.
He's number 1.
I'm sorry. I honestly, when I did an initial projection of lines for the game, I had JVR out because I had a tough time picking Joel Farabee because the indication was always that Raffle was going to probably be in.
Yeah, he was going to come back no matter what.
He was going to come in. So he's fourth line. He's going to plug in fourth line left wing beside Thompson and Pittman. So then where do you kind of fit in everybody else? So it really came down to Farabee versus JVR, and because Farabee kind of dropped down in the lineup during Game 2, he drew out despite having 2 goals in the last 3 games. Now in Game 4, with JVR really providing next to nothing in Game 3, wouldn't shock me if JVR sat for Game 4.
So let me ask you this. This is what I would do if I were the coach. And I mean it. I might put Gostisbehere in as a winger so I could cure my power play. Because that's the only way it's going to happen. Because him on defense isn't going to work. But if I make him a 4th-line winger, I'm highly doubtful that goes again. If you're going to try to use them as a winger, but then where you're going to put I don't see them shaking up the lineup to that extent. Well, but you know what? He might cure the power play, but he can't cure it on the blue line. That's the problem.
He's not going to play. He's not going to play though.
He's not going to play. But I might try and stick him in as a winger. I might.
They're not going to. I have highly doubt on that.
That's the one thing that I thought that JVR could still do is be effective at the side of the net on the power play. And I'd see last night he plays 9 minutes and 36 seconds, and almost half of that is on the power play. But he's not on the
Babcock. It's the same as the way Babcock.
He's third line left wing, so that means you saw less of. Well, Albe Cabell also took a couple dings in that game, blocking shots.
He did. I'm a little worried. Yeah, he took.
We'll see about where he's at, obviously, for the next game.
He took a beating.
He took a beating with block shots. I think the big thing for Philly, though, from a positive perspective, defensively, was having Haig back in on the third pair.
That made all the difference.
And I'll be mentioning this on my 10 Flyer Thoughts piece for Game 3 on Sportsology. Is that created an effect of the Flyers not having to mix and match their second and third pairs late in the game. They can keep their deep pairs pretty much solid all the way through, and that allows a lot. When you can have Sanheim and Myers together, then you have a really good top four, and then you can piecemeal your third line. So Haig, I thought, even if it's not directing, was a solid domino effect, whereas when you had Ghost in, you had to change up the pairs in order to cover for his defensive inadequacies.
Now, I don't know. I don't know if this is the case or not. But was Morgan Frost in the bubble with them or not?
He's in the bubble with them, yes. But they're not. Again, I don't know yet. Again, up 2-1 in a series right now. I don't necessarily think they're ready to do that. I think Farabee would draw back in first.
Right.
They're going to keep the center situation. The possibility was also maybe that going in this game, maybe they were going to sit Nate Thompson.
He's maybe up too.
But he played well. But that line played well.
I know.
That line played well in the game.
I just worry about if they go on a run, how long could he last playing that way? Because he's given up his body every.
The possibility might happen where if Lawton continues to, Lawton had a terrible game defensively, but two really bad turnovers.
Well,
do they consider moving Lawton to the third line, pivoting, and have Derek Grant centering fourth line? That would require a bit of a lineup shakeup that I don't know AV is ready to do just yet.
Well, we saw Lindblom's name be mentioned on Twitter yesterday, off and on. I mean, is that just like he's just returned? They're looking at a minimum of 2 weeks before he even would become an option, Mike.
Right.
He's skating with the team. He was in practice. It was very exciting because this is the first time he's been back on the ice with the team. But even he himself said it. He's not ready. He's not going to put himself ready to play a game unless he feels ready to play. It's at least you're looking at least a minimum of a couple weeks, maybe closer to a month, really, before you see him in. And maybe if Philadelphia gets deep and they look at him as a fourth line option, then you would see him in a very sheltered role if, in fact, he does draw back in. He's more of a talisman for them right now than anything, a motivator for them. Not want to say a cheerleader per se, but a guy who, he's kind of helping to push their psyche a little bit along the same way that the situation with Julian kind of pushed Montreal's psyche in game 2.
But the one thing we have to admit is this series is a lot harder than we thought it would be for the Flyers because the Canadiens have really ratcheted up their play. They really have.
They have to. But the thing is, for Montreal to have any kind of a chance, they know it as the 12th, as coming in as the 12th seed and now as the 8th.
Yeah.
They have no chance of winning a series unless they are going absolutely all, pedal to the floor. And Philly was not prepared for that in the first 2 games of the series. I'll say it also in game 1. There were good moments, but second period was terrible in game 1, and then it became a They did not. They were practically standing still in game 2. And Montreal just blew right by them. So that's when they made their adjustments for game 3. It was ugly. They won, but there's still things that have to be worked on before I would say with confidence that Philadelphia is going to slam dunk this series. It's not there yet. It's not close.
Now, my nominee for the craziest game of the weekend was the Calgary-Dallas game yesterday. And this series is as I expected. It was going to be close, and these teams are flawed. But I think the thing yesterday that even though Dallas won and they managed 62 shots on Cam Talbot, the thing that is a specter of impending doom for the Stars is that Khudobin played both games. That Bishop is clearly.
He's healthy. They said he's able to back up. So,
if he's able to back up and not start, they lost I mean, yesterday I thought he played okay, but he faced 40 shots, but that was just that game was just psychotic.
It was psychotic. He has given up some bad goals. The thing about Khudobin is he's a good guy to put in for a game, to take the pressure off, or even a couple in a row. But now you're talking big playoff games, and again, it's a big task asking him to keep the score down to 3 goals. It is. It's a big task. Now, when he was with the Bruins and they had that great defense, of course he looked a little better. But I'm just stumped why they're playing him over Bishop, because if you're healthy enough to be the backup, you're healthy enough to play. And it makes no sense why he's not in there, but that's what they're doing, and they won that game. I still don't think Calgary's out of it, too. I know people are like, well, it's demoralizing.
I still think Calgary wins it. I still think Calgary wins the series. Good for Dallas.
That was a good game for Dallas, really. I mean, that's what it boiled down to, a great comeback.
The Sam Bennett goal, the power play goal was weak. And then the shorthanded goal that I think Reeder scored.
That was a great goal.
It was a great goal, but I think Khudobin didn't read the play well. I mean,
no, he didn't read it well, but it was a great goal. Like Reeder really showed his speed on that. That was pretty. That was tremendous.
But Pavelski had a fantastic game.
He's woken up, man.
And he gets the tying goal. Now everybody thought they had tied it, but there was a goalie interference call on Corey Perry that prevented Talbot from moving over.
I do think it was. I looked at and Perry.
When you do this, it's like somebody who takes a foul in basketball and they're like, oh yeah, of course you're gonna get caught.
Perry knows how to conceal that, and I really did feel like that was.
But no, I mean, I believe they're playing again today, so maybe Bishop plays in the second of back-to-back. No, they don't play today. It's tomorrow. Okay, so, I mean, if Bishop is healthy, he should play. But, he did give up 4 goals in that game too. But I have to say, though, that Dallas, the only reason that they're in this series right now is their defense is jumping up. And even guys like Jamie Oleksiak, who's not an offensive guy. I mean, he scored that winning.
Jamie Oleksiak. I mean,
my God. But
watching a giraffe skating up the ice.
Anything you get out of Oleksiak is good.
Yeah, it's not Penny Oleksiak who's swimming for a gold medal. It's Jamie who's like,
right.
Yeah, but no.
Jamie can probably get across the pool pretty quickly. A couple strides and he'll get there.
Couple strides, he's there.
But it'll be nice and slow. It'll be slow. It'll be slow strides. Not a lot of power in those things.
In the chat room, they're asking where has this Sam Bennett been? But this Sam Bennett that's come out is going to get a decent contract from somebody. He is.
He's got a Viking beard going, man. I love it.
Yeah.
Him and Giroux, his beard and Giroux's beard look exactly alike.
They do.
That's been their best line, Russ. It's been Bennett, Dubé, and Lucic.
Giroux's not.
Yeah, Bennett.
I pointed at a couple good plays yesterday. Come on.
Bennett, Dubé, and Milan Lucic has been their best line, which is strange.
Well, Lucic has been, he's gotten trust from the coaching staff. I have to sing that every time Lucic said that. Every time I see him say that in that conference, it's just like
I am not touching that.
Okay, thanks, Milan.
Yeah, $6 million worth of trust. Okay, the last series they'll discuss is the Blues and the Canucks, and the Blues avoided going behind 3-0. And I have to say, because we in our little chat, when I saw the decision that they were going to put Jake Allen in, I said this series is over with because Jake Allen is not the goalie that Binnington was. Now, he played okay. He didn't steal them the game. I think it was more the fact that the Blues played a much better overall game than they had in the first 2. Now, granted, game 2 went into overtime, so it wasn't like the Blues have been blown out of this series. It's just been very impressive how the Canucks have been able to, use their offensive abilities and stick up for themselves against a very physical Blues team to, lead this series 2-1. But this series, I do believe, there's game 4 tonight. So I'm wondering whether they're going to go back to Binnington.
I don't think they will. I will tell you this. For all the grief I've given Jake Allen, the one thing I can tell you is by being in that Blues locker room more than a few times during that cup and practices, that team loves him. Whether he is the backup or the starter, they love that guy. And so I think they just made the switch because, hey, Binnington wasn't playing his best. So they switch it to Allen. The team realizes, okay, we got to play better. They did. I think they're going to leave it alone. That's how Berube usually is. I think Anthony's going to agree on that.
Sorry, last part again. I literally just I lost your signal. Say it one more time.
I think you're going to agree that Berube usually, if a goalie's going good, he leaves that goalie in.
Yeah, it's entirely possible he stays with Allen for the next game. I mean, I had thought maybe it was more of a shot across the kind of a shot across the bow, and Binnington was going to get that start originally. If anything, this is like he felt the need to do this. It's a team psyche thing.
Yeah,
and that they needed to snap too, and that's exactly what St. Louis did yesterday. They snapped too. They looked like they did last year, and they had to.
Yeah, I think part of it also is not just putting in Allen, right? It's the other scratches he made also was that shot across the bow saying, no one's immune from sitting on the bench if I don't get the effort that I'm going to need. Mm-hmm. And stop resting on your laurels from last year because last year is over and this year is this year. And if we lose one more, we're on the verge of going out. I think it's going to be more interesting. Personally, I probably would go back to Allen. I thought he played well enough that he deserved a second start. The question is going to be, is does Tarasenko and those guys get back in the lineup, or does he stick with the team that won yesterday?
He might stick with the team that won yesterday.
I thought the effort was much better yesterday.
Craig Berube is that kind of guy. I will say this, too. Early on when Sammy Blaze, or now it's like Blaz, I don't know. He's changed his name every year. But
St. Blaze.
Heiskanen and Heiskanen?
Yeah. Blase.
When he wasn't in there, we all wondered why he wasn't. He's been one of their best players. He really has.
Yeah, I would agree. But again, I have a hard time seeing them not have Tarasenko in.
I agree, but they did win that way.
They did, but I think it's almost
unless he's just not up to 100%.
That maybe
was phenomenal yesterday. Besides the game winning goal, I thought Shen had a really good game. So did O'Reilly. I thought both guys had.
I didn't notice Shen at all until this game. At all, like very little.
They are saying that Steen and Tarasenko have injuries.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Steen and Tarasenko are both injuries, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that explains.
All right.
Now, it doesn't say what for next game, but it just says they are injured.
Unfit to play when we feel like telling you.
Yeah, and by the way, just going back to your Calgary, I thought Talbot played, despite giving up the number of goals, I thought Talbot played a great game yesterday. I mean, he had
a good playoff.
He was under siege throughout. I mean, there was a 20-shot differential in that game between the two teams, and Talbot was great in my opinion yesterday.
I think Talbot's had a good playoff. Period. I think he's had a good. I've really been impressed with this play.
Now
it's not dominating, but it's pretty. It's borderline. It's good enough.
And that's a killer. That's a killer goal to give up with 11 seconds to go, especially when they look like they had a shot to get the puck out of the
and do it. I mean, we've seen it happen to every goalie's had that happen to him.
Yeah, including Robin Lehner.
Now we have 4 games today: Lightning, Blue Jackets at 3, Avalanche, Coyotes at 5:30, Bruins, Hurricanes at 8, and Blues, Canucks at 10:30. We haven't heard yet whether they're going to go with Reimer or Mrazek. I would think that they would go back to Reimer. But
I don't know. I'm really up in the air.
I mean, they're down, so I'd have to consider it.
But they've only played Reimer in the back-to-backs. They haven't played Reimer later, and he's played 2 good games. Even though I'm not a big fan of his game, he's been, I think, the better of the 2 goalies. But I mean, it's going to be tough for Carolina without Svechnikov. That's a big chunk of their offense.
I don't know how they're going. I'm looking it up. My sense is they're probably going to go Mrazek just simply because they feel like he's more athletic, and they're going to go with that. Look, the Bruins, it's interesting because they know now that they don't have Rask and they don't have Pasternak, and they're starting to figure it out without him. And that's what's really the greatness of this depth with this Bruins team is, and really it's those veterans that started it all. But, we've seen McAvoy pick it up. We've seen other guys pick it up now, and Halak is good enough to win. And it's funny because Carolina was everybody's darlings for a while, and they're still a really good team. But if somehow they get edged out here, we can't say that this is shocking because this is what the Bruins do.
Carolina, to me, is basically their goal. To me, this is the thing we worried about them the whole time.
Yeah.
They feel like they're a goalie away. They're going to have to be aggressive in getting one. They can't wait for Nedeljkovic. They have to go out and get somebody, and it'll be interesting to see who that will be, who they decide to go for.
Well, it's going to be tough for them though because both Reimer and Mrazek are under contract at around $3 million. They'll think a little more for next year. So, you're going to go spend? I mean, they're going to have to probably trade one of them to open up space to be able to sign somebody else. And that's
Dutton was quick to send in the $25,000 check for Brindamore, but will he be quick to give Leonard the money he was going to ask for when they were going to go try and trade for him? Will he do it now? That's the question.
Yeah. Some news and notes.
They probably could win the cup.
And the other question that I have before we go there is, I thought about this, and somebody else brought it to me about the check, which we all thought was cute and cool. But the Canes, what is their situation with regards to their furloughs with their employees?
It's a good question. I don't know.
Well, I know that there's the Forsland is not coming back, so that's one situation in terms of,
But also like the team employees and stuff like this. Somebody brought this up, and it's a good point. That you go for it's the cheeky social media move, and even I thought the same reaction. When this person brought it up to me, it's a good point. You're going to have a fun social media moment, but at the same time, you're taking it out of your own coffers instead of the coach's coffers. Right?
Well, here's what was written August 7th, which is 10 days ago. The Triad Business Journal. Dozens of employees with the Hurricanes could face permanent layoffs if the pandemic drags on much longer. So that's a good point.
But they went for the whole, hey, look at us in right, and I get it, and it's emotional in the moment. But if you're an employee, you're like, and I'm getting furloughed with the possibility of losing my employment. You're having a good old time throwing around $25,000 and with $17 added to it for being cheeky.
It's a fair point.
All right, some news and notes.
I apologize.
Evgeny Malkin had successful left elbow surgery, expected to be out 3 or 4 weeks, which doesn't really matter because they're not going to be at training camp until mid-November. Knock on wood. But does this explain sort of Malkin's sort of absent play?
Yeah.
During the playoffs? I mean, obviously, they always have these situations where players reveal their injuries, and I didn't hear any great revelation from.
I thought I heard some whispers about Malkin, though, like nothing that was substantiated, but it was that there was something up, physically for him. And
I never heard anything, but I
thought I heard something along those lines, but maybe it was just hearsay from somebody.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it does explain a bit, but it doesn't cover for what we saw out of them against Montreal.
No, I mean they're still they fired most of their assistants, so they're obviously going to make big changes regardless. But I still don't think they're going to trade either him or Crosby. I don't think it's going to happen.
No. Longtime NHLer Mike Green is set to announce his retirement, according to numerous sources. Not exactly surprising. The last few years in his career with Detroit, he was in and out of the lineup with injuries.
Yeah, great career though.
Yeah, great career. I mean, the thing is I compare sort of, he's like the North American Sergei Gonchar. He was sort of a rover forward type of, he
may have had a higher point season than Gonchar, right? With that 85 points he had.
Yeah, but he was, I have to say, it's like he made a lot of money in his career, and he was a really talented offensive player on the blue line. He was always.
He got a little better over time. We have to give him
a little bit, but not much. I mean, again, I always have to use Stratomatic comparisons. He was always a 1 on defense, which is the worst rated. I don't think he got much better than
How
that.
often do they change that now in Stratomatic when a guy gets a rep? That's what I want.
Well, the thing is, we're at the point now with defensemen is that we put such a premium in the early 2000s up through current era on splashing out for offensive defensemen because and Green was part of that group. But we all agree now that, it's nice to have the offense, but at the same time, you got to be able to play your position.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, Russ, Phil Housley, when he started his career with Buffalo, he was the worst rated defense. And later in his career, like with Winnipeg and Calgary, he was like a 3 or a 4, which was the one of the better ratings. So they eventually gave him the respect for improving as a defender. But I never thought Mike.
Here's an interesting thing. So he's going to have over 500 points in his career, and number 50 on the list has 568 all time with the NHL. So he's probably in the top 65, 75 players, blue liners for points. That's a nice little mark he's made.
Yeah. Any final thoughts?
I'm sorry, wait. Name me a Leafs defenseman recently that's in that list. If you're going to say, yeah, that's a pretty good career.
Well, not recently, Russ. That's the reason I've been harping on the Leafs defense for the last decade.
Well, now name me the next one that's going to get 500 career points.
Well, Caberlet had a bunch of points. I don't know if he had 500, but I think he probably he probably had in the 400s. Yeah, he had a long career. So
he did. Let's see.
Not Frankie Thomas.
No, I know. He did have 563 points.
There you go.
But he didn't have that all with the Leafs.
No. Well, he
had most of them though.
Yeah, most of them. Yes. All right.
He is the last one. Good one.
We'll be back tomorrow with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast for Jan Levine, for Anthony Mangione, for Russ Cohen. I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching. And remember, without the buzz,